going to talk about the Deathless Vines, because I think that although this artifact at first glance seems kind of interesting, there are some big implications for what might be coming in the future. So again, in this video sponsored by the makers of Call of Dragons, we'll go over what this artifact does. We'll talk about what I think it means for the heroes that are probably right around the corner that are infantry. And then lastly, we will talk about what pet I think maybe would be worth investing in right now, given that this artifact does something very specific. So first things first, the Deathless Vines. What does it do? Well, the Deathless Vines gives you infantry unit defense and legion hit points, and it is a 7.5% artifact. So the artifacts you typically get from your basic keys are 5% artifacts, damage taken reduction and damage dealt boost. But this is a 7.5%er, which may not seem like much, but 2.5% on each side of that equation, 5% total of extra goodness, ends up being a big deal, right? It's like technically 50% more than those other artifacts. So anytime a 7.5%er shows up in game, you need to be paying attention to it. So what does it do? Well, at the max level of attributes, it inflicts Immobilize on up to 5 enemy legions in a designated circle, and this does seem to have a range. In addition, it grants shelter to up to 2 surrounding friendly legions, including your own. So I think that's your legion plus one other, and that lasts for 10 seconds. The artifact range is increased if you lead an infantry legion. So this is designed for infantry for a lot of reasons. And the Immobilize effect here makes it so the legion cannot move. The shelter is a defense boost of 40%. Now keep in mind, anywhere you would get a shelter buff, it doesn't stack. So the stronger shelter effect will apply. In this case, it would be this Deathless Vines effect. Now there is a limit here. Immobilize can only be inflicted once every 10 seconds. And I think the relevance of that is not you inflicting the Immobilize very quickly again, but more likely to be multiple people with this artifact inflicting Mobilize sort of chains back to back. They're saying you can't stun lock somebody, basically, right? At least only once every 10 seconds. Other games have a diminishing effect, but this game does not do that. This game basically says, hey, you got hit once, you can't get hit again for a window of time, all right? Now, here is the additional effect, and the 7.5% artifacts generally have these very powerful additional effects. When a legion receives healing via a hero's skill, artifact skill cooldown is reduced by 8 seconds for every 600 points of healing factor. Effect can be triggered once every 6 seconds. There is a lot going on here. First of all, this is making it so that, in an obvious way, doing healing means faster activations of the artifact. But is that even relevant? In 99% of the time, you charge in with your infantry, you get your ability once, and then they die. That is how it works out most of the time, unless you're just raffle stomping and crushing your enemies anyways, which means in that situation, like, who cares? You are winning anyways, right? Like, win more when you're already winning is a situation that I think is not as important as optimizing for, like, oh man, this artifact turned the tide from, like, I was losing and now I'm winning, right? Which maybe the Immobilize effect could do something like that. But the point I'm trying to make here is that in the most common situation, you're dead before you get to use this again, right? Or if you're not dead, you were winning by so much, does it matter? I mean, it's nice win more, and it's cool to win more, but that's the point I'm trying to make there. Now, in addition, if we read too much into this language, which I will try to do now, when a legion receives healing via a hero skill, it doesn't say this legion. I mean, they know the words this legion versus a legion. So I almost wonder if your hero wearing it heals something else. Does this reduce the cooldown? Question mark. Right? So, as an example, we know Indus heals other units. I'm not saying this is the Indus meta artifact, but what I'm pointing out is, like, is it possible that this is pointing to the infantry heroes we will get next? And why do I say that? Well, we already got an artifact this season. Okay, it already happened. It was associated with cavalry. In fact, it might even be in the list of artifacts we could pick from here. If we go to select, there it is. We already got this one. So I can't remember ever a season where we got an artifact completely unrelated to a new hero, and it only showed up here, right? Like, Deathless Vines is assuredly related to a specific hero, and that hero is not yet in game. So the question is, well, what does that hero do? Well, we were expecting infantry anyways. We're expecting an infantry garrison because Gorish and Chisgule, we got a rally combo, right? So one should be for fielding, one should be for garrison, which means, does the upcoming infantry garrison do some amount of healing? And does that healing apply to itself, like Garwood heals himself, or does that healing maybe even apply to other units that are nearby, other legions? Now, typically when a unit heals, it will always prioritize itself, or shields, or does anything, right? Like, any unit that's like says it will affect multiple legions always prioritizes itself, then will prioritize friendly units that belong to you personally, and then we'll prioritize other friendly units like another player's units that are in your alliance, as an example. So it's certainly true in Rise of Kingdoms, the predecessor to this game. I think that is also true here. But regardless, I think there will be some sort of healing on a new infantry commander or hero that shows up in game, which begs an interesting question, okay? Because I generally feel like healing is not a great mechanic for a rally or a garrison. And you may be like, well, Chisgule, why would you think that? Garwood heals. He's a garrison hero. Why is that bad? Well, okay, let me explain this. And I've had to explain this like over and over and over and over. Lots of people, it takes a second, and they're like, oh, I see why you're saying this now. But when you've got a garrison that heals as their main skill, like, wow, 1400 healing factor, very cool, right? But you know what else gives you more troops if you're rallying or garrisoning? Is someone could just reinforce, okay? And that gives you more troops. So this effect of healing in a rally or garrison context is not good. And it's not good because you could have got that same effect the exact, for free, some other way, right? Like, you could have got that from just reinforcing the thing, the garrison or the rally. And so Garwood might be okay in a garrison, but certainly at some point in time in the history of the game, he was okay, right? And could be still, but that effect is not nearly as powerful as it could have been, okay? And the reason is that you could do this just by reinforcing. So if we've got an infantry garrison coming up and that garrison is doing healing, I am immediately concerned about the validity of that garrison. Now, that said, Rise of Kingdoms, we had a garrison commander, it was called Zenobia, and she was amazing for a very long time. And what did she do? She healed herself, and she healed nearby stuff. Why am I mentioning that? Well, I mean, if we're getting a Zenobia-like garrison, and by the way, she did other things when she healed, and that's a part of what made her good for a time. The healing is like, bro, didn't need to be there. But the other stuff that came with it is what was so powerful. She gave it just like a health boost, I think an all damage boost. It was like a very meaningful boost. But if we got something similar to that on a new hero that heals itself and one other thing, okay, and all of that triggered as a part of the Deathless Vines, in that single turn, I don't know that it would, but when we get down here, when a legion receives healing via a hero skill, maybe it's just this legion. Maybe it's, and this is language, it seems precise, but it's actually very confusing to me, and maybe I am just confused. But when a legion receives healing, if they meant this legion, they would say when this legion receives healing. And if they meant when this legion heals other units, they should say like when this legion provides healing or something, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but some amount of healing is probably on its way. And I assume that this artifact is not just a late addition in the game that magically is going to be associated with Garwood, which, like, it could be, right? It could be that for some reason, this far into the game, the developer's like, hey, you know what we need is an artifact for Garwood right now. We need another artifact. It needs to be just for Garwood. And it is this healing artifact. And like, boom, here it is. And it would be very good with Garwood, right? Except for the fact that 99% of the time, your in the situations that matter, your infantry are going to be dead before you'd ever get that cooldown reduction anyways from healing. So like, matters doesn't matter, honestly. And so in that regard, if we look at this artifact and we say, well, just literally forget about the other piece of the puzzle here. The piece of the puzzle that's like, hey, you actually can reduce the cooldown. If we forget about that, like, yeah, a shelter effect is very good. I think that immobilizing enemies is obviously very good. Even if you didn't put this on a healing infantry, it would be good. Okay, it would be a good artifact, especially compared to, you know, what else might you be using right now? I mean, I do wish I had this hammer maxed out. It just seems fun. It just seems so fun compared to some of the other infantry artifacts, but whatever. Like, I don't know, compared to a Fang of Ashkari, like, it does cool stuff. This does defense, and it's just a 5%er. But, you know, if we get a look here, and we say, okay, well, what if this is a signal that the upcoming infantry does healing? And what if we just assume that it heals itself primarily, and it heals for a lot of healing factor? Because the amount of healing factor here is relevant. What if it's 1800 healing factor? Because they say 4 seconds for every 600 points of healing factor. Unless this like actually could scale, like such that you don't need to have exactly 600 to earn your 4 seconds, right? Like, let's say it's just a lot of healing factor. Then you know what might be good coming up? And I've been working on this specifically for this reason, but it is possible that a Stripe Bear could be good. Now, I actually caught this Stripe Bear in exactly this state. No rerolls, no nothing. This is the Stripe Bear I caught. And for those that don't know, the Stripe Bear has this ability, Friendship. Every time your Legion is healed by a hero skill, it gains Vigor, HP bonus for 5 seconds. Every 100 healing factor increases Vigor's effect by an amount. All right? So if we're talking about that 1800 healing factor, or even something less than that, and that is all applied onto your main army, okay? That ends up being really meaningful, right? Like, there's cool stuff you can do with a Stripe Bear. So in preparation for this happening, a potential, healing thing showing up in game, I have been just getting a ton of this talent skill right over here. And I've just been saving it up. And I actually just got insanely lucky. I got 5 of them. Like, never in the history of my playing have I been able to recycle the pet and get the skill. Like 100% of the time I got Friendship, which is really weird because like most of the time I do the like trick that everybody thinks they're a genius for doing, and like you use a 2-star skill to harvest a 1-star skill, and like most of the time when I do that, I just get the 2-star skill. I just get racked. And I almost never get the talent skill. But with the Stripe Bear, I shot like 100% of my shots were hits on recovering these 1-star skills. It was insane. Like in 3 days, I got 5 1-star skills on the Stripe Bear. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, man, that was fast and unusual. All right. So I got my Stripe Bear lined up. And, if we're talking about a meaningful amount of healing factor, right? Like if I can take this thing up to 2 stars, I think I can look at the 2-star version of Friendship on this pet, right? With the high strength value that I have here, holy smokes. It's 0.46 base and then a 0.94% boost, right? So, I mean, depending on the healing factor here, you're looking at like 15% health. That's a nice little buff from a pet. Now, in general, I think the Stripe Bear is actually very, 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 very weak and underpowered compared to your other pet options. And that is because it isn't built to have the big synergies that other pets can have. What do I mean by that? Well, these days, it seems like the overwhelming majority of pets, especially for physical damage, are designed to have like the Fatal Bite, which gives you crit damage, the Angry Roar, which gives you crit chance, and there's one other one that gives you crit chance, right? But like, Blood Roar, there it is. Like, that's sort of the combo, the package of damage enhancers. So you take tons of ways to do skill damage, then you take all these abilities that increase your crit chance and crit for skill damage, right? And like, boom. When you deal, I guess not skill damage, but physical damage from your pet. That's like the combo. The Striped Bear can't do that. And in that regard, it is a low potential pet. But given that maybe we're getting a healing infantry, I went and I did the pre-work and I got all those 1-star skills. I actually ended up with one more 1-star skill than I had intended. I meant to just get like 5 of the 0-star skills so I could apply it and then upgrade it to 1-star, and then apply the 4 1-stars and have a 2-star. But literally, like I said, like I shot a perfect record harvesting these 1-star skills. This pet here. And I've been talking to some folks and they think maybe their theory is not like if it's 2 stars versus 1 stars, but that this is like, just a theory, but that the lower value skill is easier to harvest. But now I'm going off the deep end. So for me personally, as much as I'd like to run, 5 infantry and be an infantry lunatic, because that sounds fun, but also really low merits. My stance on the Deathless line for now is that I'm going to chill. I'm not going to get it yet. I assume it will come back when new infantry show up. If not, like, how crazy would that be? They drop the new infantry and then don't give the artifact for that infantry unit? No, I think this will come back, okay? And I'll be able to get it when the new infantry show up. I look forward to getting it at that time, assuming this is the artifact that is associated with the new infantry. And if not, gosh, I sure will be glad that I waited personally, because we don't know. Maybe there will be some new artifact with the new infantry, and they just, for whatever reason, released an extra artifact, didn't announce it as though like, hey, we're doing more artifacts than normal. We're still going to do more next season related to the new, heroes, but here's some extra stuff now, right? Like, I think they just released this early, I think, but maybe not. Maybe not, which is why I'm waiting. Because if there was some other garrison artifact, I mean, as cool as this one will be to have, I've been collecting up, these 918 keys for quite a while. So as someone who is trying to be very smart with the use of my keys and very careful with the use of these keys, and my goal has been to try to max 1 new artifact every generation of heroes. Yeah, I think I wait. And in a best case, I just can get this later. GG, I could have had it sooner. But in a worst case, I would get this now, and then literally a couple weeks later, they're like, and here's the new artifact for the infantry that are coming up like momentarily. And I'll be like, guess I need to start buying the bundle again, right? GG's. But I do think this is an interesting one for the collection. And like I said, the only thing that's a head scratcher for me is that this effect of healing to reduce the time feels remarkably irrelevant in the situations where I care the most. And that is the situation where it is even, in which case I'm going to get wrecked. Your infantry always get wrecked. Or if we're losing and your infantry are definitely getting wrecked, it's hard to imagine any amount of healing here happening fast enough to make it so you actually have this cooldown and get to use it again. All right. If you enjoyed the vid, throw a like on here, consider subscribing. If you want to see the last vid I did, probably in the end screen, right over here. I think you might enjoy that one. And until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.